Hello, everybody. It's Marilyn Harris here of Hard at Work, and I'm also known as the Kindness Lady. I guess some people used to call me that. So anyway, I'm doing this podcast series really about creating an impactful legacy for businesses. And what I'm also learning about being impactful legacy is not just about businesses; it's about doing good in the world as well. I've had quite a few people that have come to me about that. So today is with me is Gregg Ward, and he's really into about respectful leadership, and I'm going to let him talk more about that um, and what he's up to these days. So, Gregg, welcome to the call. I so appreciate you coming on today. So,
My
tell us a
pleasure.
little bit about how'd you get going, started doing what you're doing.
Well, I've come to where I am by a pretty circuitous route. I actually trained and worked for a number of years as a professional actor, writer, and director in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell into a job that kind of changed my life. The New York City Police Department wanted to try something new in a training program. So they hired a bunch of actors. Well, they actually came to me first
Mm-hmm.
and said, hey, we want to use actors in a training program to help cops handle what they call EDPs, emotionally disturbed persons. Do you
Okay.
think you can put together a team of actors to play people who are upset, emotionally disturbed, or on drugs, or violent, or suicidal, things like that? And I said, sure. I was young and crazy and stupid. So I thought, sure, I could do that. And that led into a very powerful and effective program that was much better than anybody ever thought it could be. And it kind of opened my eyes to the power of theater to be used as a training tool. And so one way or another, I've been doing that kind of work. Along the way, I also fell into serving as a freelance correspondent for BBC Radio and other UK media while I was on assignment in Europe for about 5 years. I got to cover the fall of the Berlin Wall, which was really interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually came back to the United States and started working in developing leadership and training programs for corporations and government around the issues of emotional intelligence and diversity and inclusion
Mm-hmm.
and leadership and organizational culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do now. I'm a consultant and coach and trainer on all of those issues, and I focus a lot on respect and what I call respectful leadership.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about respectful leadership. What does that mean to you?
Well, one of the things it means is first understanding that respect is not what we think it is. A lot of us think that respect comes after rational cognitive thought
Mm-hmm.
about another person's behavior. Well, that's not the case at all. Actually, respect and feeling disrespected is very much a feeling-centered
Right.
experience. And it has very little to do with rational thinking. It's all about how you react to other people's behaviors in your limbic system, or the reptilian brain. A lot of people are not quite sure how that functions. But essentially, if I were to treat you, for
Mhm.
example, in a way that you found respectful,
Right.
and it really matters what you find respectful, not what I think is respectful. A
Right.
lot of people live by what they call the golden rule: do unto others as you would
Yeah.
have them do unto you. Well, not everybody wants to be done unto the same way. So it's my job as a leader is to figure out how you want to be done unto. And
Mhm.
if I find that you want to be treated a certain way respectfully, then when I do that, your brain, what's called the amygdala, and you've probably heard of that. Many people have heard it's a little bit of neuroscience, but it sends a signal to release a hormone called oxytocin.
Mhm.
And oxytocin is also known as the bonding hormone or the love hormone. Now, you get a little hit of that inside of your body, you actually feel good. You feel warm and fuzzy.
Mhm.
And you think the person who treated you in a way that you find respectful is a respectful person. And
Right.
eventually if I were to continue to treat you that way, you would find me to be a respectful person, and you'd put on a pair of sunglasses and you would see me through lenses that said to you, respectful guy.
Right.
And so that's that unconscious bias thing going on. And all of this goes on in the background. It goes on in our primitive reptilian brain. And the reverse is also true. If I treat you disrespectfully, you're going to have a threat response. You'll go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. You'll
Hmm.
receive a number of hormones, including adrenaline, cortisol, known as the stress hormone, and another hormone, which is really hard to pronounce, so we'll forget about it. But the point is that once you have a feeling reaction to someone based upon their behavior towards you, that's unlikely to change with rational thinking. And so once we understand that over time we develop relationships based on respect and disrespect, well, that's really the crux of our relationship. As Maya Angelou is famous for saying, people will forget what you said and people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Right.
And so respect is all about feeling, and respectful leadership is just acknowledging that concept and then treating people in the way they want to be treated, which is
Right.
also known as the platinum rule.
Right. Yeah, I know. I kind of laughed about that. I think I even made a post or something one time saying that, well, you might say, I'll treat you how I like to be treated. I probably don't want to be treated how you treat yourself. You know,
Exactly.
and if we don't know how to treat ourselves with kindness, then we're not going to be treating other people with kindness.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So like what you said is respectful. It's like, okay, how do you want to be treated? And I'll treat you how you want to be treated. But if you show me you want me to be treated with being obnoxious and rude, then I guess that gives me permission to treat you like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And in fact, most people say, well, I didn't intend to be disrespectful. Well, most of us, unless we're sociopaths, don't intend to be disrespectful.
Right.
But the problem is we don't think, we
Mhm.
don't ask.
Right.
They say to me, well, how am I supposed to know how you want to be treated? Ask me.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. You're actually showing me respect
Right.
by asking me how I want to be treated. The classic one is if I'm intending as your boss to give you feedback, I'm going to ask you, what's best for you? Do you like to get the feedback in person, face to face? Do you prefer it on the phone? Or do you want to get that feedback in an email so you can process it? How do
Hmm.
you want feedback? And I'll give that a shot. And if that works, great. We've now got a good way of doing feedback. But if I find that your behavior doesn't change as a result of my feedback, I'm going to come back to you and say, I don't think my feedback method worked that time. We're going to try another one. And
Hmm.
so it's that back and forth, and it's that willingness to be open to someone else's point of view and the way they want to be treated. That's what respectful leadership is really all about.
Hmm. As you were talking, I was just thinking too about respectfulness and stuff like that. Quite often I'm sending messages to people on LinkedIn when they connect. Okay, how can I support you? And they just like, duh, what does that mean? Like they have no idea.
Right.
And so I guess, maybe as you help people figure it out how they like to be treated. I don't know. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of your clients that you work with
Sure.
in some
Sure.
ways.
I'm very fortunate. I had a book published called The Respectful Leader, which came out in 2016 by John Wiley and Sons. And it's a fable. It's what's known in the genre of business fable. And it's about a 90-minute read about a new CEO in a company that he's been hired to turn around. It's in trouble. And what he finds is that the whole place is filled with disrespect. Everybody's at each other's throats. And that's one of the main reasons why it's not working well.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries the old-fashioned command and control and carrot and stick leadership techniques, and those blow up in his face. Fortunately, there's a woman who's the head of the maintenance department. She's a former Air Force mechanic who was, let's shall we say, very direct, but she's respectful, and she hits him up the side of the head with a monkey wrench. and basically makes him understand that if you treat people with respect, they will respect you in return. And through trial and error, he eventually learns how to treat
Mhm.
people with respect, to turn his company around. So that's essentially the book, and most people have told me they've enjoyed reading it. I wrote it simply as a good story, and if you
Mhm.
learn things from it, that's great.
Yeah.
And then follow that up. If I get a call, which I often do, from somebody who's read the book, and say, hey, can you come and do this work or do something at our company?
Mhm.
Recently, I flew to Florida and I helped a company. The general manager of a manufacturing company had read my book.
Mhm.
And he said, can you come and lead a workshop with all my managers and supervisors? Sure.
Yeah.
And so the idea is I go in and lead, I can lead half-day workshops, full-day, two-day workshops. I also specialize in using live professional theater in my training programs.
Yeah.
All the way back to the work I did with the police department.
Right.
And because I find that using professional actors in presentation of
Mhm.
realistic scenarios and what I call experiential learning, what you and I know as role play,
Right.
people really respond really well to those professional actors. So I use a lot of that to help people learn skills and techniques on interpersonal communication, conflict de-escalation, giving feedback, handling uh, personal problems, you name it.
Mhm.
I've kind of been there and done it. And I love the work. And I do provide a lot of coaching as well to senior executives who want to create transformed cultures which are more respectful, because all the data, by the way, I'm sure you've heard this, all the data shows that kind organizations and respectful organizations tend to have really good metrics. They have a good retention, a lot of loyalty, uh, better productivity, collaboration, and partnership.
Yeah. Less friction, more
Yeah, less
communication.
friction, less complaints, fewer, lower turnover. You name it, it's all there. It's just helping hard driving, hard bitten, skeptical CEOs see that there's real value in what they consider to be warm and fuzzy and
Right.
kumbaya kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the biggest challenge, but I'm glad to hear that you've been able to accomplish it through using actors or plays or within your training. I think that's so important. So, so you've done that very successfully. So what kind of clients do you normally like to work with, or do you just
Well,
rely?
that's a very wise question. When I work with major corporations, which I have done for many years,
Mm,
it kind of feels challenging because you're like one person with his hands up on the side of an ocean liner, kicking with his feet and
right.
trying to get that ocean liner to change direction. That's really hard.
Hmm.
And you have to have the buy-in of the captain of the ship and all the seconds in commands, and just about everybody in leadership has to want to go in this new direction. And
Right.
that can be extraordinarily complex, and you have one major player who doesn't want to change direction, and quite frankly it can be a waste of money and time.
Right.
So I find that the smaller organizations where there is a fundamental commitment by the highest levels to changing the culture, and that's usually because there's been problems and they
Right.
see it, and they're looking at their metrics and going, we need to do something about this. It's those smaller companies, those mid-sized companies where there's enough of a willingness to change, and they're nimble,
Hmm.
that they will,
Yeah.
if they buy into what we're talking about, then they can change. And of course, I love also working with small companies. Not too long ago, I worked with a company that had 400 employees,
Hmm.
and within the course of a year, that included training and coaching and consulting, we were able to make some really, really fundamental organizational culture changes
Hmm.
for the better.
Hmm.
And it worked out really, really well. Even though the engagement eventually ended after about 2 years, um, they're still friends. We still are in contact with me.
Hmm.
They still call me up and they're telling everybody they know about the work that we did.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a great thing. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question. I'm
So
sorry about that.
that's all right. So can you maybe just give us one little example that you tool or something you did to help shift things?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, a lot of organizations, including the one I just mentioned,
Hmm.
are a lot of folks are dispersed
Right.
and they're operating remotely or out of remote offices or their homes. And so they don't see each other very much, or
Mhm.
except either on Zoom or Skype or just on they talk to each other on the phone and conference calls. So one of the things that we know from our research around interpersonal communication is that when you're in person with someone, you can read all the micro messaging, all those
Mhm.
subtle little facial expressions and
Yeah.
tone of voice. You can really pick up on that. Your sensors are very finely attuned. But when you're only on a conference call or even on a Zoom call
Yeah.
with video, you can miss stuff. And so what was happening, because they were undergoing such rapid growth,
Right.
there was this tendency to dispense with the niceties,
Hmm.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's what I call practicing regular respect. Hi, how are you today? How's the weather there? How are the kids? How's the family? All that kind of stuff. People tend to dispense with it because, oh, we're so busy, we got things to do, I got to get on another call, let's go, 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 go. So there was this sense of people were getting pissed off at each other, quite
Right.
frankly, because they perceived that their colleagues didn't care, or
Right.
their bosses were just too busy to spend a moment to check in.
Right.
So one of the things I said is, look, I said to the leadership across the board, do a 30-second check-in whenever you have a call. Just 30-second check-in. How is everybody doing? Anybody want to give us a big win in their life or in their work? I say give people permission to talk about just about anything they want,
Right.
and also find out in advance who had a baby in the family, who got married,
Yeah.
hey, who's got a birthday? Hey, everybody, Marilyn's she's celebrating a birthday this week. Let's all say happy birthday over the phone to her.
Yeah.
It's dumb little stuff like that
Yeah.
that makes people feel valued and respected and
Right.
appreciated. And
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be, I'm going to give you a $1,000 bonus this week because you're a great performer. It's not about that.
Right.
It's more about connecting
Hmm.
and just touching people in a way that means something to them.
Right.
So I encourage them, stop driving always, got to get going, got to get going. And the phone calls would go on too late and then they'd be rushing on, rushing off. Make connection with people, celebrate the small wins,
Hmm.
both personal and professional. And you'll find that people are much more friendly and open and welcoming and kind in their interactions remotely.
Right.
And sure enough, once they put in the 30-minute check, the 30-second check, all of a sudden things started to get much, much warmer and friendlier, and people were more flexible with each other, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. More at ease.
Yeah, perfect.
Because
More at
when
ease.
they're at ease, they feel that, okay, I'm a part of this team.
Right.
Then yeah, so it's just expressing that, like you say, I love the 30-day challenge or 30-day, whatever it is, and then they do the 30-second check-in like you were doing too.
Yes.
Kind
Yeah.
of, there's lots of different ways of doing it. Yeah.
There is the flip side is one of what I call the respectful leadership dues or respectful dues is to nip disrespect in the bud. Sometimes we say things that in hindsight we go, oh, I should not have said that. That was just not quite right.
Right.
So if you notice you did it yourself, right then and there, you said, hey guys, you know what? I just said something I shouldn't have said the way I said it. I'm going to rephrase that. I apologize. You won't hear me do that again.
Right.
It's a very simple, but what we call a full apology. And I'm telling you, people who say, I don't like to apologize, it makes me weak. Well, all the research tells us that
Yeah.
if you apologize for misspeaking or doing something disrespectful that you didn't intend to do, the respect for you actually goes up.
Yeah.
It's when you don't apologize and everybody's kind of wondering, geez, Gregg just put his foot in his mouth. He didn't say anything about it and he didn't apologize for it. That respect for you goes down.
Right.
So it's nipping disrespect in the bud. That also means if your team says something disrespectful, take them aside
Hmm.
privately. Don't do it on the call, because
Yeah.
that's kind of,
Disrespect just went.
yeah, exactly. A lot more disrespect. So you just take them to the side quietly in a phone call or in person if you can, and say, and use a technique I call the ODP, obtain openness. Just say, hey, do you have a moment to talk about what happened on the call? The D part is decreased defensiveness.
Hmm.
Just say, hey, look, this is not a big deal. We just want to address it and move past it. And you're not in trouble. You're not going to get fired, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And also, hey, I have a lot of respect for you. This was just a one-off kind of thing. So get that person to decrease their defensiveness. And finally, P stands for promote possibility. So
Right.
just say, hey, what could we do to repair this? What do you think you could do in the future? Let's talk about some possibilities. So I call it ODP. It's just
Hmm.
my little anagram, or
Yeah.
whatever you call it, for a process that I recommend all the time.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. We all have our own little acronyms to do things.
Acronym. That's it. It's not an
Acronym.
anagram. It's an acronym. Thank you.
That's okay. And as you were saying, I should apologize. But, oh yeah, I guess I should apologize. I said 30-day challenge, and I'm like, that's not what you said.
But I like it. Can I steal that? I like that. 30-day challenge.
Yeah, you can have it. I've done that. You
Or
can
see if you could be respectful for 30 days without
say,
any disrespect.
respect.
Wow. That would be a heck of a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, it's really good. So tell me, anything else you want to share before we end the call?
Well, thank you for asking. I get a lot of calls these days from leaders who say, my team is really stressed out. I'm stressed out. We're all under a lot of pressure. We're all
Mhm.
being asked to do more with less and respond to our key stakeholders and so on and so forth. And what do I do? And I say, well, you don't have to do big things, but the small things will add up.
Mhm.
And if you can just refocus yourself on connecting, as I said, with
Mhm.
people in a genuine and sincere way, cut them some slack when they screw up. I have something called that I call the two-strike rule. I don't believe in zero tolerance unless someone engages in truly egregious behavior. But if
Mhm.
someone screws up, I give them a second strike. I tell them after the first strike, hey, this is what happened. Can't have that happen again.
Right.
And then let's move on. And if it does happen again, then we get into some pretty serious disciplinary action. But
Mhm.
cut people some slack. Um, Offer support as best you can. Try not to revert to what's called command and control leadership, where you're just barking orders at people and expecting them to jump, or say, how high do you want me to jump? And generally try to treat people the way they want to be treated. It's
Mhm.
it's little things like that that we find over time really do make a significant difference in how people feel you are
Mhm.
as a leader in any kind of crazy organization. And one last thing is, be willing to speak truth to power. And this is really, really hard,
Mhm.
because if you work in an organization which has a toxic culture,
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, that's driven by leadership.
Right.
And everyone else is kind of emulating what the leadership are doing.
Yeah.
So if that bothers you, if you're really challenged by that personally and professionally, and your integrity, you're out of integrity yourself, you have to be willing to go to whoever you can and say, look, this has got to stop. We've got to change our behavior because we've got some metrics here that show that we're in trouble.
Mhm.
And it's that willingness to speak truth to power which actually gains you an enormous amount of respect, and even from the people that you're holding accountable for being
Right.
respectful. Um, what a lot of people are afraid of is they're going to lose their job.
Right.
And you know what? Sometimes quitting a job where you're working in a disrespectful culture, a toxic culture where you just want to die before you get to work every day,
Right.
quitting that job is probably one of the best things you could ever do.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, totally.
Thanks.
You can't improve it on your own. You
Nope.
have to have other
No.
people, the higher ups, to guide guide the process. If they're not willing, there's the old saying I used to say all the time: fish rot from the head down.
Oh yeah.
So if the fish
Yeah.
is rotting and it doesn't want to change before it rots and dies, then you have a choice: stay or go.
Very smart. Now, of course, you shouldn't just jump.
No,
You should prepare for that
right,
and reach out to your colleagues and friends in the industry, if you're going to stay in the industry, and say quietly, hey, is there any opportunity for me over here?
yeah,
So I've known people have just said, I can't take this anymore, and they just walk.
right,
And I get it. I
yeah,
understand it. You have to think that through very, very carefully, and talk with your loved ones and make sure everybody's okay with it.
everybody's on the same team. Yeah,
Yeah. There's
yeah,
nothing worse, I think you would agree, than being stuck in a job, in a culture you can't stand.
right.
Nothing worse.
Yeah,
And these days, with low unemployment, if you've got some kind of training and skills and experience, it's pretty likely you're going to be able to find another job.
right,
May not be at the salary you want, may not be with the perks you want, but it may very well be in the culture that you want, and that's enough.
right, right.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Well, I loved having you, Greg. It was great.
Thank you.
I'm sure that we can do another conversation. We can do an update at another point in time, I'm sure. But anyway, I'm just gonna close. Thank you for Greg. You can find Greg's information on podcasts.hardatworkonline.org, and his page will be up, and this video will be there too, so you can watch it. And you'll also find him on Anchor, probably within the next week or so as well. So thank you, Craig, and I'll send you over the link as soon as I get it. And in the meantime, thank you very much for sharing your wise words and your wisdom and your experience. And I'm sure that so many people will get a lot of benefit out of it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.